I'm Alice McBain, and I'm the author behind Author versus AI. If you'd like to learn more, please follow along on my website, authorversusai.com. In this video, I'm sharing tips and tricks about how I'm writing a book a week and how you can do it too. The topic this week is effective research and why it's important. I'll start off with a story. A friend of mine wrote a fantastic fantasy story. It had romance, it had time travel, and the ending changed the entire future of the characters for the better. It was essentially a very fun speculative fiction adventure, completely made up. However, one of the letters she got from a fan said essentially, fun story, but when your characters were on this wooden boat from historical times, you got the oars of the ship wrong. When she told me this, she was laughing because it was such a strange thing to pick out. Time travel obviously doesn't exist, and there were a lot of other elements to the story that weren't true either. However, this small detail is what stuck out to the reader's mind since it was their area of expertise. I just wanted to tell the story to highlight the importance as well as the limitations of research. However, at the same time, I want to also let you know that her story did get published and it also won awards after it did. Whether the oars were right or not wasn't a big deal in the long run and didn't affect how great the story was. So this is an important lesson. Don't let research paralyze you from proceeding forward, but do try to get the true bits of your story as accurate as possible, or you might get a letter from a reader just like she did. So here's what I do when I'm researching facts for my books, and perhaps how my methods might be able to help you too. First off, my research starts before I start writing. I begin when I'm writing the outline for my book. The last thing I want is to have some pivotal point in my book end up being unworkable because what I've made up doesn't work in the real world. So I research key facts of my story as I'm composing the outline to make sure that everything on a large scale will work. I keep a separate file on my computer for all of my notes, as well as putting in links or book titles and pages where I found the info I needed. That way I can always go back and find it again if I need to. For example, if I'm researching carriages for a steampunk novel, which is the Author versus AI book that I wrote last week, I need to make sure I use the right carriage for the person's social class. I make a note of it in my file, and that way I can go back to it when I need to figure out, would a duke be using the same carriage as a lady? If the answer is no, then I need to keep that consistent within the framework of my novel. Last but not least, the research doesn't end when I start writing. I also do research on the fly. So while I might know the big points of my book so there won't be any plot holes, I also need to know smaller details. Going back to steampunk, for example, knowing which gloves a lady wears for a certain occasion, or if she would even wear gloves at all. But here's a good point. I don't want research to bog me down either. If I can't find out a detail in about 5 to 10 minutes, I will just make a note and highlight it in my manuscript in yellow. Then I carry on. The first draft is not the final draft, so I have time to fix it later. Usually by the time I get to the writing process, I don't need to be looking up big items, but only the small ones to ensure accuracy. If I get one of those details wrong in my first draft, it's much easier to rewrite a sentence or two later than to stop the works and completely for a day or two to find out what I'm missing. So, hope these tips help you with your own research and show you how to use it effectively, but not let it slow you down when writing. If you have any questions or comments, please reach out to me in the chat. Happy writing.